A cauliflower-like growth had appeared on my pregnant wife's hand, right where her cuticles met her nails. She was 6 months along. I gently suggested she stop her weekly manicures and see a doctor. Her reaction was immediate and sharp. "Are you just trying to save money, Ethan? Why are you trying to keep me from seeing my manicurist?" A cold fist clenched around my heart as I watched her, my wife Chloe, drape herself over Leo's shoulder, the very manicurist in question. They were sharing an ice cream cone, their tongues licking the same swirl of vanilla, their laughter a sharp, cruel sound in the winter air. With a defiant shove, they sent me tumbling backward, off the pier and into the frozen lake. The shock of the icy water was a brutal slap, but the pain in my chest was worse. As I sank into the black depths, their words echoed in my mind, a secret I was never meant to hear. The last of the oxygen burned in my lungs, and just as I was about to lose consciousness, Leo plunged into the water after me. For a fleeting second, I thought he was there to save me, a desperate hope before the grim reality set in. He wasn't there to help. He was there to finish the job. With a look of pure hatred, as if I had wronged him in some past life, he tied a heavy weight around my waist. He pushed me deeper, his voice a torrent of abuse muffled by the water. "You pathetic fool. The woman you call your wife? She was just my sloppy seconds." I flailed, my hands finding his arm, but he was stronger. He grabbed a rock from the lake bed and brought it down on my head, once, then again. Warm blood clouded the water around me, a stark crimson against the dark blue. My vision blurred. Through the haze of pain and fading consciousness, I heard Chloe's frantic voice from the surface. "Leo, get out of there. My stomach hurts. I think it's the baby. Get me to the hospital now." A mouthful of blood escaped my lips. The pain was unbearable, not from the blows to my head, but from the complete and utter shattering of my heart. She had betrayed me, and the child, the son I was so excited to meet, was not mine. My 20 years of marriage, my entire life, had become a cruel joke. My strength failed me, and as the last flicker of awareness faded, my only thought was of the sheer injustice of it all. I opened my eyes to the sight of a woman's back. My head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. I tried to sit up, but my clumsy movement knocked a thermos from the bedside table, sending it clattering to the floor. The woman turned, and it was Chloe. Her eyes, filled with what looked like profound concern, met mine. She rushed to my side, helping me lie back down. "Ethan, you scared me to death," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "How did you get so hurt?" I flinched away from her touch as she reached for me, her tears looking horribly fake. "Stop pretending, Chloe," I said, my voice flat and empty. "You must be disappointed that I'm not dead." Her hand, which had been dabbing at her eyes, froze for a moment. Then the mask of innocence slipped back into place. "What are you talking about, darling? The baby and I were so worried. If you died, what would I do?" I let out a hollow laugh. "You'd be with your manicurist, wouldn't you? With me out of the way, nothing would stop you from being together." The sharp sting of a slap snapped my head to the side. Chloe stood over me, her hand trembling. "How dare you, Ethan? How can you have so little faith in me? I'm carrying your child, a 6-month-old baby. How could you think such a horrible thing?" I wiped a smear of blood from the corner of my mouth and settled back onto the pillows, turning my face away from her. She began to sob, her face buried in her hands. Just then, a nurse entered the room, her expression hardening with disapproval as she took in the scene. Ignoring me, she went about her work, pulling the fur from the back of my hand with a rough tug that left a large, dark bruise. I didn't make a sound. "How could you hit your own wife?" the nurse scolded, her voice dripping with contempt. "Especially when she's pregnant with your child. You're not a man, you're a monster." Before I could respond, the door burst open and a large man stormed in. It was Leo. He went straight to Chloe, wrapping a protective arm around her waist before turning on me. "You pathetic coward," he roared. "Taking your anger out on a pregnant woman. Let's see you try that with me." He rained punches down on my lower back, each blow precise and agonizingly painful, aimed directly at my left side. I gasped, trying to call out to the nurse for help, but she simply shot me a look of disgust and pushed her cart out of the room. The assault only stopped when my head slammed back against the wall, knocking over a vase. Chloe finally pulled Leo away, not because she was concerned for me, but because she seemed worried he was going too far. She didn't spare me a single glance. My hand went to the back of my head and came away slick with blood, but Chloe was already fussing over Leo, checking his hand for any injury. A cold clarity washed over me. "Chloe," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Let's get a divorce. The cotton swab she was holding fell from her grasp. Her face was a mask of shock. She reached for me, but I pulled my arm away. I'm letting you go, Chloe, I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. And I'm letting myself go, too. I don't care who you're with anymore. She didn't look happy or relieved. Instead, a desperate look entered her eyes. She grabbed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Why? Why would you do this? I'm carrying our son. You can't do this to me. I looked from her to Leo, a wave of nausea rolling through my stomach. Are you really sure that baby is mine, Chloe? Search your heart. You know the truth. I pulled my hand free and closed my eyes, but the storm inside me raged on. I had loved this woman for 2 decades, had put her at the very center of my world. I had even given her one of my kidneys years ago when hers failed. This betrayal felt like a surgeon's scalpel, carving out the very organ I had gifted her. The dull ache in my left lower back, where my remaining kidney was, flared with a vengeance. If she truly cared, she would have noticed my pain. But she was only looking at Leo. Seeing my resolve, she took his hand, a clear act of defiance. Ethan, Leo and I are just friends. If you can't accept that, then you can leave with nothing. Not a penny. Fine, I said through gritted teeth. And all those credit card debts from your designer bags? Those are your problem now. Her face went pale. No, marital debt has to be paid by you. I shook my head, the pain in my back intensifying. For 20 years, I've worked myself to the bone at that screw factory. I couldn't even afford a $2 cup of instant noodles for myself. And you? You took my money and spent it on your boy toy. How could you do that to me? A flicker of panic crossed her face, but she quickly masked it. I was using that money to help the poor. Isn't that what you always taught me to do? Blood was starting to soak my pillowcase. I dabbed at my ear, a grim smile on my face. I taught you to be kind, Chloe, not to sleep with your manicurist. Leo lunged forward again. You piece of trash, Ethan. Where's your proof? You have no proof we slept together. Don't you dare make things up. His fist slammed into my lower back again, precisely where it hurt the most. A sharp, metallic taste filled my mouth. As he drew his arm back for another blow, Chloe rushed in, wrapping her arms around him. Stop, Leo, don't kill him, she pleaded, her voice a harsh whisper. If he dies now, we won't get the money. I lay there, too weak to even scream. They worked together then, forcing a pen into my hand and guiding it across several documents I couldn't even see. As my consciousness began to slip away, I felt Chloe's lips near my ear. Since you love me so much, Ethan, she murmured, why don't you let your pathetic life make me rich? When I woke again, the room was empty and in disarray. Chloe was gone. The man in the bed next to mine kindly handed me my old, battered cell phone. The keypad was worn and sticky, but I could never bring myself to replace it. It was the phone that had started it all. A single text message had bound our lives together all those years ago. We were in college, on a volunteer trip to a rural village. Chloe had been cornered by a group of hostile locals, locked in a shed. I had noticed she was missing and searched for her frantically. In the pouring rain, knocking on every door. Just when I was about to give up hope, her SOS message came through. I kicked the door in to find her clothes torn, the men advancing on her. Blind with rage, I grabbed a piece of firewood and fought them off. Afterward, she had sobbed in my arms, saying she was too ashamed to ever face anyone again. I held her close and made a promise. I will take care of you for the rest of our lives. I will never let anyone hurt you again. Now, I stared at a new message on that same phone. It was a picture. Leo and Chloe, together in a bed, their bodies intertwined and glistening with sweat. My stomach churned. Was this the same woman I had sworn to protect? The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. I forced myself out of bed and walked to the nurse's station to check myself out. I had no money left for this place. The same nurse from before was on duty. She slammed my bill down on the counter. Wife beaters are disgusting, she sneered. Your wife and Mr. Leo are a perfect match. You probably trapped her with some dirty trick. I looked up at her, a bitter smile touching my lips. Yeah, I did. What's your employee ID number? Her face went pale, and she didn't say another word. I gathered my papers and limped out of the hospital into a torrential downpour. Huddled under the awning, trying to escape the rain, were 2 other people. It was Chloe and Leo. My stomach twisted at the sight of them. Chloe saw me, and her eyes widened in surprise. She immediately dropped Leo's hand and hurried over to me, her voice sickeningly sweet. Honey, you checked out? Why didn't you tell me? I took a step back, out of her reach. I've already signed the divorce papers. We're not family anymore. I tossed a stack of papers at her. The wind scattered them across the wet pavement, all except for one, the finalized divorce agreement, which landed right at her feet. Her smile vanished. Ethan, if you divorce me, I'll sue you for domestic abuse. I pressed a hand to my aching back, my fingernails digging into my palm. We have nothing more to say to each other. From now on, you can talk to my lawyer. I turned my back on them, my body trembling with a mix of pain, rage, and grief. As if on cue, the rain began to subside. I pulled my worn cloth bag over my head and walked away, disappearing into the gray afternoon. I went back to what was once our home. The living room was a disaster, littered with clothes, men's underwear, and women's lingerie. On the coffee table was an empty condom box. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and began to pack my few belongings. Then I saw it. In the trash can, something was lying amidst the garbage, stained with a sticky, translucent fluid. It was my brother Mark's seashell bracelet. My breath hitched. He had died years ago, drowned by those same villagers while trying to protect us. This bracelet was the only thing I had left of him, and Chloe had desecrated his memory. Rage, pure and blinding, consumed me. I was about to storm out and find her when the front door opened. It was Chloe. We stood there, staring at each other. There was no remorse in her eyes, only annoyance. Leo left something here, she said, her gaze fixed on the bracelet in my hand. I came to get it. She tried to snatch it, but I held it behind my back. You lunatic, she shrieked. Give me back Leo's thing. This was my brother's. I roared back. How could you give it to him? For a second, she looked flustered. I gave it to him, so it's his now. The pain in my back was excruciating, a white-hot agony that stole my breath. That was the only thing I had left of my brother. Please, Chloe, please give it back, I begged, collapsing and grabbing onto her leg. She responded by grabbing a feather duster and beating me with it until my body was covered in welts. My kind neighbor, Mrs. Gable, found me later and helped me to bed, bringing me a glass of warm sugar water. Oh, you poor boy, she sighed, shaking her head. I told you that girl was trouble from the start. She was responsible for your brother's death, and now she's done this to you. I stared at the ceiling, my heart a hollow, empty cavern. Mrs. Gable took my hand. Ethan, I've watched you grow up. If you need anything, you just ask. We will make those two pay for what they've done. Can you help me find a lawyer? I whispered. The day the lawyer came, the locks on my apartment had been changed. Chloe was waiting for us, blocking the door. Ethan, we agreed you would leave with nothing. Why did you change the locks? I ignored her and started to walk away. She lunged in front of me. What do you want? I glanced at my phone. I've thought it over, Chloe. I wish you and your lover a long and happy life together. But this apartment was bought with my brother's money. You're not getting it. A sudden coughing fit seized me, and I spat a mouthful of blood into my hand. Chloe's eyes widened in alarm. She grabbed my shoulders and started shaking me, and the world spun and went black. I woke up in the hospital again, lucky to be alive. Chloe was sitting by my bed, her face etched with worry. For a moment, my heart softened. But then she spoke. Ethan, you can't die yet, she said, her voice cold and calculating. If you die now, I won't get the insurance payout. You need to wait at least another month. The world tilted on its axis. The pain in my back was nothing compared to the agony her words inflicted. Get out, I hissed, grabbing a fruit basket from the nightstand and hurling it at her. Get out. Leo burst into the room, shielding her. You bastard. You really want to die, don't you? I'll beat you to a pulp. He attacked me again, his fists finding my weak spot over and over. He knew about my kidney. Chloe had told him. She had turned my greatest sacrifice for her into my greatest vulnerability. If Mrs. Gable hadn't arrived just then with the police, I would have been dead. The police questioned us, but with Chloe weeping and playing the victim, and Leo spinning a tale of self-defense, they simply gave me a verbal warning. Without evidence, my words were meaningless. After they left, Mrs. Gable stayed with me. You silly boy, she said, her eyes full of pity. Why didn't you say anything? I want him to hit me again, I whispered. She looked at me as if I were insane. I gave her a small, weak smile. I need evidence, Mrs. Gable. I need to catch them in the act. A look of understanding dawned on her face. A plan began to form. They wouldn't get away with this. A few days later, I received a text from Chloe. Let's meet by the lake one last time. For old time's sake. Autumn had settled over the city, and the air had a sharp bite. Without my second kidney, I was always cold. I waited for her, bundled in a heavy down jacket. She arrived on Leo's arm, looking glamorous and smug. "Did you sign the papers?" I asked, my voice flat. She smiled sweetly and snapped a pair of novelty handcuffs onto my wrists. "What is this, Chloe?" I demanded. My answer was a hard shove from behind. The icy water of the lake swallowed me whole for the second time. They held my head under, their faces twisted with greed. "The month is up, Ethan," Chloe's voice echoed from above. "Once you're dead, we'll get $1 million from the insurance. Just give up." I struggled, but my waterlogged jacket was like an anchor. My lungs screamed for air. Through the murky water, I could see their silhouettes against the gray sky, and I swore that if I survived, I would make them pay. And then, in the distance, I heard the faint wail of a police siren. Before I left, I had called Mrs. Gable, who had called the police. Panic erupted on the pier. Leo and Chloe scrambled to run, but they were no match for the officers who swarmed the scene. They were forced to the ground, heads in their hands. I was pulled from the water, coughing and sputtering, but alive. At the station, I pointed at them. They tried to drown me. Chloe, ever the actress, burst into tears. "It was me. It was all my idea. Leo had nothing to do with it." But when the police questioned Leo, he quickly changed his tune. "It was all her," he cried, pointing at Chloe. "She's a manipulative, money-grubbing witch. She forced me to do it." Chloe stared at him, her expression shifting from disbelief to pure hatred. "You dog. I thought you loved me." I watched them tear each other apart, feeling nothing but a cold emptiness. Let them destroy each other. They would both face justice for what they had done. They were taken into custody, and I was released. As I stepped outside, the sun broke through the clouds. It felt like a new beginning. But as I was about to get into a taxi, 2 officers grabbed me and escorted me back inside. Leo was there, a smirk on his face, flanked by a well-dressed man. He had called in reinforcements. Leo slapped me hard across the face, and my nose began to bleed. "You think you're so smart, you piece of trash? I'm the heir to a fortune. I could have you crushed like a bug." "Rich boy, huh?" I spat back, still living off a woman. His face contorted with rage, and he lifted a chair to strike me. Just then, the door to the room was kicked open. Mrs. Gable stood there, and behind her was a man who radiated power and authority. He strode forward and kicked Leo squarely in the chest. "You insolent whelp," the man roared at Leo. "Do you have any idea who you just assaulted?" Leo crumpled to the floor, begging for mercy. "Mr. Vance, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was Mr. Sterling's son." The man who had kicked him, Mr. Vance, turned to me and helped me to my feet, his expression one of deep respect. I was utterly confused. "Ethan," Mrs. Gable said gently, "you were adopted. Your real father is James Sterling, the most powerful man in this city." My world was turned upside down once more. I was taken to the Sterling mansion, a place so vast that we needed a car just to get from the gate to the front door. I sat at a massive dining table opposite my father, a man whose stern expression was intimidating. "Your medical records show you're missing a kidney," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Tell me where it is, and I will get it back for you." "I don't want the kidney back," I replied, my voice steady. "I just want justice. I want them to face the consequences of their actions under the law." My father nodded slowly. "As you wish." Later, as my father was showing me around his company headquarters, a disheveled Leo threw himself at my feet, begging for forgiveness. He smelled terrible, his clothes torn and dirty. "Please, sir, ask your father to let me go," he pleaded. "I don't want to go to prison." My father motioned for security, but I stopped him. "Leo," I said, looking down at the pathetic man before me. "We are adults, and we must take responsibility for our actions. What you did to me, I will never forget it. Be glad this is the 21st century. In another time, your fate would be far worse than prison." I kicked his hand away and walked into the building, leaving his desperate cries behind me. My father made me a general manager, but I turned it down. I couldn't forget my friends at the screw factory. My first act with my newfound resources was to buy the factory. I fired the corrupt old boss who had been skimming wages, and implemented new policies: fair pay, benefits, weekends off, and bonuses for workers with families. The day I announced the changes, my old workmates wept with joy and hugged me. For the first time in a long time, I cried too. One day, a woman in rags burst into my new office and fell to her knees before me. It was Chloe. "Ethan, Mr. Sterling, please help me," she begged. "I have no job, no money. I'm starving. For the sake of our 20 years together, help me one last time." I looked at her without pity. "When you and Leo were enjoying my money, did you think of our 20 years together?" When you tried to kill me, did you think of it then? I regret it, she cried, clinging to my leg. I truly regret it. If I had known you were the sterling heir, I never would have been with Leo. Her words were so shallow, so transparently selfish. I had security escort her out. As they dragged her away, she screamed, "It's no use. I signed the organ donation papers for you. They're going to arrange an accident soon." Her words sent a chill down my spine. The conspiracy was deeper than I thought. I pursued the lead and discovered the person who had orchestrated the fake documents was Leo's father, Mr. Vance, a longtime manager in my father's company. The next day, I received a text from my father. An SOS. The IP address was in a downtown commercial district under renovation. I raced to the location, a small eatery, and kicked in the kitchen door. My father was tied to a chair, his mouth taped shut. Mr. Vance stood over him, a lighter in his hand, surrounded by gas canisters. "Let him go," I yelled. Mr. Vance laughed, a crazed, high-pitched sound. "You sent my son to prison. You ruined his life. I want him released." "Your son is a criminal," I shouted back. "He tried to kill me. He deserves to be punished." He flicked the lighter open. I kicked a loose floorboard, tripping him. As he stumbled, I shoved my father towards the exit. "Get out of here." I lunged for the lighter. Vance fought back, repeatedly punching my left side, but I held on. The smell of blood filled the small room. My strength was failing. "Now you'll die with me," Vance sneered, standing over me. Just as my eyes were closing, a pregnant woman burst into the room. It was Chloe. With a strength I never knew she possessed, she shoved me out of the kitchen and then, in a single, fluid motion, she grabbed Mr. Vance and the lighter and threw herself and him into a large vat of water in the corner. I saw the look in her eyes in that last moment, a look of profound regret. And I understood the words she never had a chance to say. Years passed. My father retired, dedicating his life to philanthropy in Africa. I took over the family business. The work was endless, but it was fulfilling. One day, Mrs. Gable, now frail and white-haired, gave me a letter. It was from Chloe, written before her death. Reading it, I finally understood the depth of her desperation and her final, redemptive act. I visited her grave, wiped the dust from the headstone, and made my peace. On the way to the airport for a long-overdue vacation, a man threw himself in front of my car. It was Leo, released from prison. He looked like an old man, his body stooped, his spirit broken. I drove him to Chloe's grave, and he knelt there for a long time, sobbing uncontrollably. My trip was cut short by a call. The factory was on fire. I rushed to the scene to find a nightmare of smoke and flames. It was arson. My secretary, Liam, told me a suspicious man had been seen lurking around. As firefighters battled the blaze, I saw him in the crowd, a man in a baseball cap, trying to slip away. I tackled him. It was Leo. "Why?" I demanded, pinning him to the ground. "I've suffered so much," he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. "Why should you get to be happy?" In the struggle, he pulled a knife and stabbed me in the lower back, right where the old injury was. He grabbed my car keys and fled as my world went dark. I woke in the hospital to find my father by my side. He looked exhausted. My secretary rushed in, panicked. "Sir, someone is slandering you online, blaming you for the fire." The posts were from Leo. I spent the night systematically refuting his lies with facts and evidence. The police, using recovered security footage, identified Leo as the arsonist and arrested him. This time, there would be no escape. He was sentenced to death. With the final threat gone, peace seemed possible. The hospital called with good news. They had found a kidney donor for me. But the day before the surgery, I couldn't reach my father. Liam, my secretary, came to my room, his eyes red-rimmed. "Where is my father?" I asked, a sense of dread creeping over me. Liam's voice broke. "Mr. Sterling, he was your donor. He gave you his kidney." The world fell away. The man who had found me, who had given me a new life, had now made the ultimate sacrifice. The pillar that had held me up was gone. I sat in stunned silence, the grief of physical weight. Liam handed me a will. My father had known his health was failing. He had spent his last months fulfilling a lifelong dream of doing charity work in Africa, and then he had come home to give me the gift of a future. For days, I was lost in a fog of sorrow. But then, one morning, I looked out the window and saw the sun rising. I remembered my father's legacy, my promise to my coworkers, and the countless lives I could now touch. I stood up, got dressed, and went to work. I honored my father's final wish, donating a significant portion of the company's profits to an orphanage. I would live the life he gave me, not just for myself, but for all the people I could now help. I would ensure they could all live and grow, facing the sun.